whenever we were out together and there would be a picture taken, there would be a caption of some kind, and the caption usually said something like an odd couple. But to us, it was the most natural and easiest of friendships.
For more than 3 decades, Michael Jackson and Brooke Shields shared one of Hollywood's most unusual and misunderstood friendships. To the public, they were an endless source of speculation, with tabloids portraying them as secret lovers, potential spouses, or simply one of entertainment's strangest pairings. But then, Jackson's life evolved from unprecedented musical success to mounting legal battles, financial troubles, and relentless media scrutiny. In the meantime, public speculation around the disturbing truth behind Michael Jackson's obsession with Brooke Shields exploded. So, what was it really? Well, let's start from the very beginning. How Michael Jackson and Brooke Shields met. By the early 1980s, Michael Jackson and Brooke Shields occupied 2 completely different corners of American entertainment. Yet, they were living remarkably similar lives. Jackson, born in 1958, had already spent more than a decade in the spotlight. By 1979, his album Off the Wall had sold millions worldwide. And in 1982, Thriller would propel him from successful solo artist to arguably the biggest pop star on earth. Brooke Shields, meanwhile, had become one of Hollywood's most recognizable young faces before she was old enough to drive. After modeling as a toddler, she gained international attention through Pretty Baby in 1978, followed by The Blue Lagoon in 1980 and Endless Love in 1981. By the time she entered her teenage years, magazine covers, television appearances, and high-profile advertising campaigns had made her one of America's most famous young actresses. Their paths first crossed when Brooke was around 13 years old, and Michael was in his early 20s. Both would later confirm they met during this period and quickly formed a friendship. It was an unlikely pairing on paper. Michael was already navigating unprecedented global superstardom, while Brooke was still a teenager balancing school with an adult-sized career, yet both later suggested that the age gap mattered far less in their case, and thus began a convoluted saga. They were among the few young celebrities who understood what it meant to spend virtually every day under public observation. Michael would later describe growing up under the relentless discipline of his father, Joe Jackson, whom he accused of frequent physical punishment, emotional abuse, and constant criticism of his appearance. Several of Michael's siblings also acknowledged Joe's strict management style. Brooke's upbringing followed a different but equally demanding path. Raised by her mother, Terry Shields, she became the family's primary source of income while still a child. Terry aggressively managed Brooke's career for decades, and Brooke later wrote openly about her mother's alcoholism and the pressures of growing up with a parent whose personal struggles often unfolded alongside her own public career. Those shared experiences created an understanding that neither found easily elsewhere. Brooke later explained that when they spent time together, there was no need to explain fame, photographers, or the strange reality of living under constant attention. Michael often spoke about feeling isolated despite being surrounded by millions. Brooke understood that contradiction firsthand. Rather than elaborate dates or glamorous Hollywood events, their friendship often revolved around private visits. Michael would call Brooke frequently, stop by her home, or invite her to his because ordinary public outings were almost impossible for him. By the early 1980s, crowds routinely gathered wherever Jackson appeared, making even simple activities a logistical challenge. However, the public struggled to understand what they were seeing. Romance or friendship, different versions of the same relationship. For Michael, Brooke occupied a uniquely important place in his life. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, his circle of trusted companions had become remarkably small. His unprecedented fame following Thriller in 1982, Bad in 1987, and the opening of the Dangerous Era in 1991 had transformed ordinary social interaction into a logistical nightmare. Security surrounded nearly every public appearance, Crowds formed wherever he went, and private relationships became increasingly difficult to maintain. Brooke remained one of the very few women Michael consistently mentioned in interviews, often speaking about her with obvious affection. Friends and observers noted that Michael relied heavily on a small number of people he genuinely trusted, and Brooke appeared to be one of them. The defining public moment came on February 10, 1993, during Michael's landmark television interview with Oprah Winfrey, broadcast live from Neverland Ranch. Watched by an estimated 90 million viewers worldwide, it became one of the most watched interviews in television history. While discussing his personal life, Oprah asked whether he dated anyone. Michael replied that he was dating Brooke Shields. He explained that they spent time together privately because he disliked going out in public, saying she would visit him or he would visit her home. To millions watching around the world, it sounded like a straightforward confirmation that Hollywood's longest-running celebrity rumor had finally been settled. But you see, there was a problem with this admission. Upon finding out about the comment, Brooke revealed that she had never expected Michael to describe their relationship that way. In interviews and later in her memoir, she explained that she did not consider them boyfriend and girlfriend, and was surprised to hear him publicly characterize them as a couple. She admitted feeling embarrassed because the statement immediately reignited media speculation without any prior conversation between the two of them. Rather than viewing the relationship romantically, Brooke said she had always considered Michael one of her closest friends, someone she cared about deeply, but not someone she planned to marry. The confusion surrounding their relationship only intensified because of one particularly memorable gift. At one point, Michael presented Brooke with an expensive diamond ring. Unsure what it meant, she asked him directly whether he was proposing marriage. According to Brooke, Michael smiled and said no. Instead, he told her he simply wanted her to have something beautiful that would remind her how much he loved her every time she looked at it. Brooke has consistently described the exchange as heartfelt rather than romantic, but to the outside world, the existence of such a gift only fueled endless engagement rumors. Brooke has also recalled conversations that revealed how differently the two imagined the future. On one occasion, Michael suggested that they adopt a child together and raise the child jointly. The idea reflected Michael's long-standing desire to become a father, something he spoke about repeatedly throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s. Brooke, however, had entirely different ambitions. She politely declined, explaining that she wanted a more traditional path through adulthood and hoped to build an independent life before starting a family. Looking back, she said Michael sometimes envisioned a future together that she never truly shared. That difference became even clearer when Brooke decided to attend Princeton University in 1983. While many young stars would have continued working full-time, Brooke deliberately chose college, eventually graduating with a degree in Romance languages in 1987. She later recalled that Michael simply could not understand why anyone would voluntarily leave a successful entertainment career to live in a dormitory, attend lectures, and pursue what she called a normal college experience. Having spent virtually his entire life surrounded by bodyguards, assistants, and extraordinary fame, Michael struggled to imagine why Brooke would trade celebrity for campus life. Their different perspectives gradually widened the distance between them. Brooke later admitted that Michael's decision to publicly call her his girlfriend without discussing it beforehand left her feeling somewhat betrayed. Although there was no dramatic falling out, their communication became less frequent as each pursued separate lives. Brooke focused on finishing college and expanding her acting career, while Michael entered one of the most turbulent periods of his professional life, beginning with the massive, Dangerous World Tour in 1992, and only months after the Oprah interview, facing the first abuse allegations in August 1993. But to make sense of those accusations, we need to rewind to 1988. The Neverland Ranch, fantasy, accusations, and premature death. In 1988, he purchased the Sycamore Valley Ranch in Santa Barbara County, California, for a reported $17 million. Renamed Neverland, After the fictional home of Peter Pan, the 2,700-acre estate became one of the most recognizable private properties in the United States. Jackson invested tens of millions more, transforming it into something that looked less like a celebrity mansion and more like a permanent amusement park. The grounds featured a Ferris wheel, roller coaster, carousel, bumper cars, miniature railway, movie theater, landscaped gardens, and a private zoo housing elephants, giraffes, exotic birds, and other animals. Hidden behind security gates near the small community of Los Olivos, Neverland, reflected Jackson's lifelong desire to recreate the childhood he believed fame had taken from him. For several years, Neverland symbolized generosity and escapism. Jackson frequently invited seriously ill children and disadvantaged families to visit the property free of charge. However, the openness that helped define Neverland also made it the focus of increasing public scrutiny. By the early 1990s, Jackson was arguably the world's biggest entertainer. Thriller had become the best-selling album in history, Bad and Dangerous had produced multiple international hits, and his 1991 music video for Black or White attracted one of the largest television audiences ever for a music premiere. Yet, within months, the image of Neverland as a fantasy playground would be overshadowed by serious allegations. In August 1993, 13-year-old Jordan Chandler accused Jackson of abuse. The allegations emerged after disputes involving Jordan's father, Evan Chandler, and quickly escalated into parallel criminal and civil proceedings. Investigators from the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office executed search warrants at Jackson's residences, including Neverland Ranch, collecting photographs, documents, and other evidence. The investigation dominated international headlines for months, transforming Jackson from an untouchable superstar into the subject of one of the most closely watched criminal inquiries in entertainment history. Despite the extensive investigation, prosecutors did not file criminal charges. Investigators cited insufficient evidence to prove the allegations beyond a reasonable doubt. The civil case, however, continued. In January 1994, Jackson reached a confidential settlement with the Chandler family that was widely reported to be between $15 million and $20 million. The agreement contained no admission of liability or guilt, and Jackson consistently denied every allegation against him. Jackson attempted to address the crisis publicly. After the allegations emerged, he issued televised statements denying wrongdoing and describing himself as the target of false accusations. His public appearances became increasingly rare, interviews became carefully controlled, and security around his personal life intensified. Although he continued recording music and making occasional appearances, the relationship between Jackson and the media had fundamentally changed. Nearly a decade later, Jackson found himself facing an even greater legal challenge. In 2003, British journalist Martin Bashir released the documentary Living with Michael Jackson, filmed largely at Neverland Ranch. During the broadcast, viewers watched Jackson holding hands with 13-year-old cancer survivor Gavin Arvizo while discussing his belief that sharing his home with children was an expression of kindness rather than something inappropriate. The documentary generated immediate controversy. Within months, the Arvizo family alleged that Gavin had been abused. In November 2003, prosecutors in Santa Barbara County charged Jackson with multiple criminal offenses, including lewd acts upon a minor, administering alcohol to a minor, conspiracy, and false imprisonment. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Thomas Snedden, argued that Jackson and members of his staff manipulated the Arvizo family after the Bashir documentary damaged his public image. Prosecutors alleged that the family was pressured to appear in a rebuttal video defending Jackson and that they were effectively prevented from leaving Neverland during this period. Jackson's defense was led by veteran attorney Thomas Messereau, who highlighted inconsistencies in witness testimony, challenged the prosecution's timeline, and introduced evidence showing that the Arvizo family had traveled away from Neverland during periods when they claimed to have been confined. Former Neverland employees testified that the family had freedom of movement, while travel records and photographs were presented to dispute claims that they had been held against their will. The trial, held in Santa Maria, California, lasted nearly 6 months and attracted worldwide media attention. The defense argued that the prosecution had failed to produce reliable physical evidence supporting the charges. After months of testimony and approximately 32 hours of jury deliberations, the verdict arrived on June 13, 2005. Jackson was acquitted on all 14 counts. The acquittal ended the criminal case but did not restore Jackson's finances or public standing. His legal defense cost tens of millions of dollars, and years of declining touring revenue, loans secured against valuable assets, and the ongoing expense of maintaining Neverland left him under severe financial pressure. Estimates at the time placed his debt between $400 million and $500 million. To address mounting financial obligations, Jackson announced the This Is It concert residency at London's O2 Arena in March 2009. Originally planned for 10 concerts, overwhelming demand expanded the schedule to 50 sold-out performances, representing what was expected to be the largest commercial comeback of his career. That comeback never happened. On June 25, 2009, just weeks before rehearsals were due to culminate in the opening performance, Michael Jackson died at the age of 50 from acute propofol and benzodiazepine intoxication at his rented home in Los Angeles. His death abruptly shifted attention from debt and legal controversy to the administration of one of the most valuable entertainment estates in history. Executors John Branca and John McClane restructured the estate's finances, expanded licensing agreements, and developed new revenue streams through posthumous albums, documentaries, and partnerships such as Cirque du Soleil's Michael Jackson, The Immortal World Tour, and Michael Jackson. 1. Forbes would later rank Jackson among the world's highest-earning deceased celebrities for multiple consecutive years. Debate surrounding Jackson, however, did not end with his death. In 2019, director Dan Reed released the documentary Leaving Neverland, featuring detailed allegations from Wade Robson and James Safechuck. The documentary premiered at the Sundance Film Festival before airing on HBO in the United States and Channel 4 in the United Kingdom, reigniting global debate over Jackson's legacy. The Michael Jackson estate rejected the allegations, emphasized Jackson's 2005 acquittal, criticized the documentary's methodology, and pursued legal action against HBO. More than 3 decades after Neverland first became synonymous with fantasy, it remains equally associated with one of the most enduring and polarizing debates in entertainment history. But how did all of this affect Brooke Shields? The enduring friendship and Brooke's later reflections. By the time Michael Jackson faced abuse allegations in 1993, one person many expected to hear from remained almost entirely silent: Brooke Shields. As Michael's life became consumed by legal investigations, Brooke deliberately avoided becoming part of the public debate. She did not embark on a media campaign defending him, nor did she publicly distance herself from him. Instead, she chose not to comment on allegations she had no first-hand knowledge of. That restraint continued during Jackson's 2005 criminal trial in Santa Maria, California. While several celebrities publicly expressed support for Jackson or appeared at the courthouse, Brooke remained largely absent from the story. She was not called as a witness, did not give interviews about the evidence, and never attempted to influence public opinion regarding the case. Unlike figures such as Macaulay Culkin, who testified for the defense, Brooke chose to keep her relationship with Jackson separate from the legal proceedings. Her silence was notable precisely because the media had spent years portraying her as one of the people closest to him. Everything changed on June 25, 2009, when Michael Jackson died unexpectedly at the age of 50. Within days, preparations were underway for a public memorial at the Staples Center. Among the many calls received by Brooke was one from Katherine Jackson. According to Brooke, Katherine personally asked her to speak during the memorial service because she believed Michael would have wanted his longtime friend to be there. Brooke later admitted she was deeply moved by the request, but also genuinely surprised. You see, Brooke believed one member of the Jackson family had never accepted her. For years, she had felt that Joe Jackson disliked her, and she assumed he would object to her participation in such an important family event. Rather than avoiding the issue, Brooke confronted it directly before the memorial began. She later recalled approaching Joe Jackson and telling him, in essence, that he had never liked her and that she had never particularly liked him either. She then thanked him for raising the son who became one of her closest friends. When Brooke stepped onto the stage during the televised memorial on July 7, 2009, she chose not to focus on Jackson's record-breaking career or global fame. Instead, she spoke about the person she knew away from cameras. She described Michael as one of a kind and reflected on how the media had long portrayed them as an odd couple. To reporters, their friendship seemed strange and difficult to explain. To Brooke, however, there had never been anything unusual about it. She told the audience that whenever they were together, they were simply two little kids having fun. In the years that followed, Brooke continued to describe Michael as funny, gentle, generous, and intensely compassionate. But she also emphasized something she believed many people overlooked: his loneliness. According to Brooke, Jackson's level of fame made ordinary experiences almost impossible. He could not casually walk through a shopping mall, sit unnoticed in a restaurant, or spend an afternoon in public without attracting enormous crowds. She argued that many of the behaviors mocked as eccentric were, in reality, attempts to experience everyday life in private because normal life was inaccessible. When asked how she reconciled her affection for Michael with the accusations made against him, she said she wished she knew the truth because only then could she declare a verdict. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.